Please welcome Jim Kerr and Ken Summers, both former conservative Republican state legislators from Jefferson County.
Good afternoon. You've heard of diamond and silk. We're kind of iron and rust. Our Republican nominee for governor must be electable, a proven problem solver. He must be a principled conservative. He must be one who knows how to overcome the obstacles of life. Victor Mitchell exemplifies these characteristics. On a personal level, Victor knows what it is to put family above personal ambition. And he knows that through the challenges and ups and downs of life, God has a plan and purpose for him.
Thank you all for being here. I'm here to support my good friend, Victor Mitchell. Independent businessman, a member of the Legislative Audit Committee when I was the chairman. Victor could read a balance sheet. Victor knew how to hold bureaucrats' feet to the fire. That's why I'm here to support our next governor, Victor Mitchell. Thank you.
Please welcome Colorado gubernatorial candidate, Victor Mitchell.
Well, thank you. It's great to be back here at the Western Conservative Summit. And before I get started, I have a big shout out to all the good people who came from outside of Colorado to support our economy here today. So thank you for joining us. It's hard to believe that this journey started about a year ago. And I had very little name ID at the time, but we very much tried to be very much a grassroots candidate. If you can believe this, we've done some 600 grassroots events across 63 of our 64 counties, really showing that competent, ethical, visionary leadership could get elected in Colorado and really make a difference in people's lives. My name, of course, is Victor Mitchell, and I'm a candidate for governor. And people ask me all the time, Vic, well, why exactly would you want to run for office? And the answer for me is pretty straightforward. You can feel frustrated or even disillusioned, even angry towards our state of our union, or you can put yourself out there and be part of the solution. I choose to be part of the solution. Now, I come at this a little differently than most. I come at this as an outsider, not as a politician. I come at this as a family and military family. My wife, who's my very best friend, who's somewhere out in that audience today. We've been married for almost 30 years. We're very proud of our 3 children. Our eldest graduated from CU a couple years ago. She's a software engineer as of a week ago, but she just sprung on us. A pleasant surprise that she's leaving being a software engineer and she's going to become a school teacher. So you never know what your kids are going to give you. What a pleasant surprise that was. Our son, who's 21 years old, is a West Point cadet. He'll start his senior year next year, and he'll, next year at this time, commission as a United States Army officer. Thank you. Thank you very much. I often say I married up. And then, of course, we have a 14-year-old that we love dearly. We call her the sweet angel from heaven, but she's recently discovered that her parents don't know anything. But we're working on that, of course. Of course, I come at this as an entrepreneur and as a business owner. I started my first business when I was 21 years old. I've never worked for anyone other than myself. I've built 6 successful businesses in different industries, from technology to telecom to finance, including one of the largest private telecom companies in the country. It was founded here in Arapahoe County. And I think the essence of an entrepreneur is somebody that thinks differently, that's not afraid to take risks, that has some imagination and creativity. But above all else, somebody can solve problems. We elect lots of what I like to call problem talkers, and they deliver great 2-minute stump speeches. They often make us feel good. They share our values, of course. But at the end of the day, we're electing the next CEO of our state. You know, it's actually been proven that more often than not, we often vote for people based on name identification or how, how we share their values, how they make us feel. But that's just not good enough anymore. We've only elected 2 Republican governors in 62 years, if you can believe that. And maybe it's possibly who we're nominating. This time around, why don't we think about somebody that's done extraordinary things in the private sector, how they've treated people for 30 years, what kind of community involvement they've been in, but most especially, above all else, do they really have the abilities to solve complex problems and exploit great opportunities facing our state? I think I'm uniquely qualified in that sense. We said also a year ago that we'd do things very differently. We would try to stay authentic to who I am as a man. We would try to be very substantive and put big and bold and different ideas to take on and reform a lot of our bureaucracies. We also said we're not going to accept any political endorsements, none whatsoever. With political endorsements come political favors. And we also said we're not going to accept any special interest money. We're going to put Coloradans first in everything we do. Now, I thought in the few minutes I had here, I thought I'd share some of those ideas with you. Now, I was elected. I was very fortunate to represent one of the most conservative districts in Colorado. I was elected 10 years ago. I served one term. I went back to the private sector. And at that time, we had about 1,000 businesses in one form that were regulated under the Department of Regulatory Authority. Today, we estimate that number is about 3,500. And this is in a period of 10 years. We've never been as regulated as we are as a state. In fact, the current Hickenlooper administration has added 120,000 pages, if you can believe this, of new rules and regulations, and most of those are adversely affecting small business. Do you remember when Obama told us, you didn't build that? Well, I've never bought under that pretense. Many of you are business owners as I am. I mean, that's just totally ridiculous. I want to roll back 100,000 pages of rules and regulations. I want to raise the bar of regulations. If it's not truly about public safety, it should be gone. I'm going to bring in a half a dozen or so people that come from the private industry with very distinct careers, but unlike me, have no ambition to run for office, so they won't be conflicted, and really do a top-to-bottom review of our regulatory scheme. I also want to bridge the urban and rural divide. Not $1 of our economic incentives should go to a company like Amazon.com. This is one of the richest companies in the world. It's totally ridiculous. Thank you. 100% of our economic incentives should be targeted to small to medium-sized employers, employers that can operate in economically challenged communities around our state. Companies can go from 20 to 30 employees. Companies can go from 100 to 150 employees. It's also going to require us to invest in vocational education in our rural school districts, which frankly have flat to declining school enrollments. I've also been very involved in healthcare as well, and I want to do something that's not been done before. I want to get us entirely out of the Colorado Health Exchange, get at us Medicaid expansion, which frankly is rationed, low-quality care, and use those funds to provide block grants to entrepreneurial nurse practitioner clinics, physician assistant clinics, mental health clinics, where we would have a panel of retired nurses and doctors would review their business plans, and the state would then, if it was approved, would fund up to 50% of their operating budget. If they didn't meet quality standards, they didn't meet the metrics, the promises they made to our citizens, then they would lose funding the following year. I'll work tirelessly directly with the federal government to get the government off our back and get all of our Medicaid funding in the form of block grants, so we have total control over that. We're the healthiest people in the country, Coloradans are. We have the lowest rates of diabetes. We have the lowest rates of obesity. I also come from very humble beginnings. I know what it is to overcome very long odds in my life. I was raised by a single mother who's 90% blind and deaf. I started working at age 13. I'm a product of public schools. I'm a product of public university. And I started my very first business when I was 21. In fact, I actually taught up at CSU, and it was a wonderful experience to try to wound some of our kids with knowledge and get some of that liberal influence out of our classroom. But since this is the Western Conservative Summit, I thought I'd talk a little bit about my conservative credentials. First and foremost, I'm the only Republican candidate for governor that opposes any and all new taxes or debt whatsoever that's being proposed today. Thank you. The last thing we should be doing is giving $5 billion into CDOT with fewer than 30 cents of every dollar actually hits our contractors' hands. I want to reform CDOT. I also am a pro-life practicing Catholic. I strongly believe in my faith. I try to live my faith every day. I want to be an advocate for reducing abortions and increasing adoption, strengthening our adoption laws here in Colorado, which are some of the weakest in the state, and really trying to destigmatize women young girls that have an unwanted pregnancy. I'm also the, thank you. I also have an A+ rating from the NRA, and I've never taken a dime from their organization. I believe in, fully support the Second Amendment as well as our full Constitution. I want to basically make sure that our rights are protected. I support concealed carry. I also support repealing our magazine limits as well. And finally, immigration. This has gone on too long, sanctuary cities. And this can be fixed by the governor. We can't stop cities like Denver and Aurora from being sanctuary. But what we can do is we can cut off their funding directly through the long bill, and I plan to do just that. Thank you. I also support passing legislation where any mayor or county commissioner or town council member that refuses to cooperate with federal ICE agents can be held civilly liable. Thank you. If they want to swear on the Constitution and say, you know, we're just going to ignore it, well, there should be real consequences to their actions. Thank you. So my name is Victor Mitchell. I'm the outsider businessman in this race. I'd love to earn your support. God bless, and let's win this thing in 2 weeks from Tuesday. Thank you so much.
Victor.
Oh.
No, come on. It's okay.
Down here.
Is there stairs? Sorry, that's my fault. I didn't give good directions.
Come down.
Yeah.
Got it.
Sorry about that.
Good to see you, Heidi, my friend.
Good to see you, too.
Got a little lost there.
I'm used to that with my husband. Oh, sorry. Jason's not here, I don't think. So, Victor, each conversation I've had with the different candidates, I've started with the question, 4 years from now, you've been the governor, you look back, what's your best success or the thing you're most proud of accomplishing as governor, and how did you do it?
So wouldn't it be great if I come back here in 4 years as Governor Mitchell, and we sit around today, and we address the Western Conservative Conference, and we say, you know what? Our roads are working better. Our schools are working better. It's more affordable for higher education. People can access primary care anywhere in our state, whether in a rural community or an urban community, rich or poor, affordably, even without insurance. I think that's possible, and I actually think we'll make that happen as governor, and I hope that will be my legacy.
Thank you. I need to hold this up real close. So a hot issue that you heard Laura Carno talk about right now is school safety. I'm on the governor's school safety committee, and I've been watching the back and forth in the different silos that are out there about how to keep our kids safe. I also have small children that I drop off at school, and I'm still terrified. How do you fix this, or what would you do?
This has been such a complicated problem, and we've become generally desensitized to school shootings, and there's no reason why we can't get on top of this. And we should also come to terms that the federal government is basically dysfunctional, and they're not going to be able to get it done. Colorado, of course, has a tortured and very tragic history with school and mass shootings. So first and foremost, I'm going to get the politicians out of the way, and we're going to bring in the smart people. We're going to bring in the FBI profilers. We're going to the people that really understand criminal behavioral profiling. We're going to deal with mental health professionals. We're going to strengthen our schools. But this is not a gun problem. This is a society problem. And this particular generation, for whatever reason, doesn't value the sanctity of human life, not at the least like previous generations have. But this can be resolved. It's going to take a multifaceted approach, but it's going to have all hands on deck to really deal with mental health. We know with these school shootings several things. We know there's almost always a mental health component. We almost always know that seconds are the difference between life and death. Mm-hmm. So we know that every time these things happen, the Democrats basically want to take away our constitutional rights to carry. You know, guns don't kill people, people kill people.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So something I know a little bit about college as a regent, we both agree that college is too darn expensive. And I know I have some ideas about how to solve the problem, but what are your key ideas that you could help and support me as a regent to accomplish?
So absolutely, and I appreciate the good work you've been doing on First Amendment issues around our colleges, because let's face it, our colleges are very liberal. But very specifically, I put forward a 3-point plan to deal with higher ed. We're the 4th most expensive state in the country to send a kid to college, an in-state kid to college here in Colorado. It's upwards of 35 grand to go to CU, our perennial university. Our daughter graduated there from a few years ago. First and foremost, my plan is we're going to have a complete freeze on all tuition prices during the entire term of my administration. Second of all, we're going to deal with student affordable housing, which is roughly 1/3 of the cost to go to CU. And third, I want to take all of our state funding today that we subsidize for higher ed and earmark towards the STEM or the STEAM fields, the science and technology, engineering and math courses, and really try to triple the amount of STEM graduates. These are the degrees that change people's lives. I mean, you want to talk about income inequality or income disparity? Get a kid through CU in 4 or 4.5 years. Get them a degree in electrical engineering or physics. They're immediately into the mainstream. They're immediately into the middle class. There's nothing more, and it gives them a foundation of skills that they can keep with them for the rest of their lives.
Thank you. So we have about a minute left. You're in an interesting position. You don't necessarily support President Trump, or you didn't vote for him, but we've also got a left-leaning populace out there in Colorado, but you're a strong conservative. How do you navigate that to win this thing?
Well, that's not exactly true. I completely support the president and most of his policy. I just didn't vote for him. I voted for a third-party candidate. It's the first time in my life I didn't vote for that. But that's in the past. I mean, I've been very supportive of the president. And I think if you actually look at electability, we have 50,000 Facebook supporters who've joined our movement, more than all my opponents combined. Roughly 1/3 of our supporters are registered unaffiliates. We have the most conservative, the gentlemen who just introduced me are 2 of the most conservative men I know. We have moderates. We have the broadest base of support, and we will win if we can just win this nomination in 2 weeks. I understand I'm an outsider, still very much an underdog, but I'm certainly, I believe, the most qualified to lead our state forward and really try to bring confidence and trust back to our institutions.
All right. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me.
Well, thank you, Heidi, and God bless.
Thank you.